Nearing the 28th day of the government shutdown, federal lawmakers who are supposed to be adults are reaching new heights of petty. A day after Nancy Pelosi informed the president he should postpone his State of the Union speech because of the ongoing shutdown, Donald Trump informed her he was canceling her overseas trip for the very same reason. And the blame game goes on.
While many Democrats in the House and Senate would like to make a deal, Speaker Pelosi will not let them negotiate. We need strong barriers and walls. Nothing else is going to work. Everyone knows it.
The president says the only way to do it is with a wall. That's a debate that we have, but it was no debate that we all agree that protecting our border is a responsibility we have, and that has always been the case.
So as the dysfunction in Washington continues, 800,000 federal workers still have no idea when they might get paid. Although if you ask the chairman of the White House Council of Economic Advisors, Kevin Hassett, they're basically living the dream.
They have the vacation, but they don't have to use their vacation days. And then they come back, and then they get their back pay, then they're, in some sense, they're better off.
Better off? Typically, a key component of a paid vacation is the paid part. Not weeks of trying to decide between paying for rent and food while you wait for that check, or worse yet, life-saving medicine that they now can't afford.
I didn't wear my insulin pump at all. I just took it off. And there was one night where I checked my blood sugar, and it was almost 600, which is about triple about what it should be. I just, I went to bed and just hoped I'd wake up.
Unbelievable. At least some of the furloughed workers can apply for unemployment, but what if the 420,000 essential employees who have to keep showing up for work and have no way at all right now to get any stopgap cash? Here's what Republican Senator Lindsey Graham had to say to them.
It will be inconvenient, and it can create problems. And to the federal workforce, I'm sorry you caught up in this mess, but the real damage is people coming across the border, selling drugs, killing Americans.
You know, you likely wouldn't be surprised to hear that most federal employees feel that their struggles are real damage, too. And while Trump did sign a bill yesterday guaranteeing back pay when the government finally gets back up and running, that does nothing for the workers struggling to make ends meet now, including about 8,000 here in Massachusetts. Valyria Lewis represents many of them as a national union rep for the American Federation of Government Employees. She's also a former TSA agent herself, and she joins me now. Good to see you. David Martinez is a 20-year veteran of the Federal Bureau of Prisons. Hello to you, David. And Linda Bilmes is a former Assistant Secretary of the U.S. Department of Commerce, now a senior lecturer at the Harvard Kennedy School, and author of The People Factor. It's a book about the federal workforce. Linda, thanks for coming back. I appreciate it. Valyria, let me start with you, particularly since you work at the TSA, a really stressful job. I'm pretty well aware of that. How are TSA workers doing in this region?
TSA workers are very stressed out because they still have to arrive at work and do their job and do it effectively. They're not being paid, and they're having to reach out to try to find outside employment, which cuts into that amount of rest time that they actually need to come back to work. And we're getting into violation of Department of Labor laws where they should have at least 8 hours of rest time, but when they have to go out and try to find employment wherever they can fit in, they have to do what they have to do.
Don't they also need good credit scores? Isn't that one of the criteria? And if you're not paying your bills, I assume your credit scores aren't going to do so well.
Absolutely. The employees have a national security clearance, and with that, and also the Justice Department employees have that same security clearance where they have to maintain a financial suitability. If their bills go delinquent, then they could lose their security clearance, then they're forbidden from coming to work because they're terminated.
You know, speaking of stressful, I can't imagine more stressful in normal times than being a corrections officer, and obviously you're president local as well. What are your members doing? How are they dealing with this, 28 days now with no pay?
Well, so the members that work with me, I have are in a bunch of different financial situations. So we have single earner incomes. We have situations where a married couple might both be working at the prison, and so they're losing both incomes. We have situations such as like mine, where my wife might work, but her pay is not at my level, and so there's an impact at every level.
So what are people doing without the cash for the 4 weeks so far? With no notion, it'd be one thing if you knew that on a certain day it was going to end. That's not wonderful, but it's better than this. You have no idea when you're going to get paid.
Right. The most obvious is that we are calling our creditors, trying to establish different payments or delaying payments.
Are they being reasonable, most creditors?
I've heard probably 80% of the creditors have been reasonable, but I've heard a couple of nightmare stories already.
Like what? Give me one.
I heard one in particular was a mortgage that the company wasn't working with them.
Wasn't working with, meaning they could have foreclosure potentially.
Yes.
How are the inmates reacting? As I'm looking at you, I'm just thinking, that's who you work with. You see them. How are they reacting?
Well,
to the
so
fact
far, not much has affected them because the agency continues to run.
But how do they feel about you guys? I mean,
in general, not every inmate is friendly or whatnot, but there's some that have expressed sympathy.
Linda, we heard from the White House, I'm sure this didn't make Donald Trump happy, that the economic effect, the negative economic impact, was worse than he had suggested. And we heard yesterday that it will reduce the quarterly growth rate 0.13% a week, which means absolutely nothing to anybody. In real terms, what's the impact of 4 weeks, 5 weeks, et.cetera.? What's the impact of the shutdown on the economy?
Well, the impact is significant, and it's also kind of snowball effect that the longer it goes on, the more it gathers pace and affects the economy. I mean, the effect is that in terms of what the White House Council of Economic Advisors said, it's already taken 0.5 point off this quarter's growth.
Which means what?
Say if the economy was going to grow at 2% in this quarter, it means it's only going to grow at 1.5%.
Okay, so what's that mean for the three of us in our lives?
What it means, it's not only the 800,000 federal workforce.
People watching the show.
It means that we are going to have to. We're going to have to pay sort of higher taxes to get less service because there's less activity going on in the government. It also means that there's going to be less spending in the economy, which means anybody who is in the economy, which is basically everybody, is going to be worse off as a result of the shutdown.
Federal workers, I know, can't strike. And we all know the Patco story when President Reagan fired the air traffic controllers. But when you get up in the morning, and when your members get up in the morning, do you not say, if they told me, I love this job. If people said to me, by the way, I'd like you to show up for another couple of months and we'll pay you when we feel like it, I would be enraged at work every single day. What's the mindset of your coworkers?
Yeah, there's higher stress. People probably are a little more quick to snap on the smaller scale. But it affects us all. There's stress and anxiety in the job to begin with, and this only adds to it.
And let me just say, I hear from employees across the nation, and they're extremely upset that they were handed a letter telling them how to go and apply for food stamps. And for us, that was essentially a "We'll Work for Food" sign that's printed on a government letterhead. And they're outraged that the food stamp program may run out at the end of February if the shutdown continues. So then they'll be working for free. Your
union, I know, has filed a lawsuit, and while I'm a lawyer, I'm surely not a lawyer with this level of expertise. It seems to me under things like the Fair Labor Standards Act,
absolutely,
under constitutional amendments that prohibit involuntary servitude, I don't understand how this is even legal to force 400,000 people like you to go to work and not pay you. Is the litigation pending? Is that where it is?
The litigation is pending. There was a lawsuit filed in the previous shutdown, and it was successful, and that's why we filed it this term. I believe NTEU filed an additional suit to try to get these folks paid, and that was rejected in federal court. But the officers took an oath that they would uphold their oath and serve and protect their country, but the country is not upholding their end of the bargain, so they breached their contract.
You were at the Commerce Department. Is this legal?
Well, it may be legal, but it's reprehensible. And I wrote a book, The People Factor, about this issue, that we don't treat the federal workforce like assets. Every single top company in the world sees its workforce as its most precious asset. And in the government, we kind of pay lip service to this, but actually we just see the workforce as a cost. And we don't invest in the majority of the workforce. We spend the minimum on training, investing in kind of the next generation of skills. And yet we have, for the most part, an incredibly dedicated federal workforce. So I just want to say, watching this whole thing unfold, as bad as it is for the federal workforce now, the long-term impact of this, which I see with my students at the Harvard Kennedy School, is that everybody is looking at this thinking, I don't want to work for the federal government.
Well, people, and also the average person, even if they don't work there, doesn't trust government to begin with. This means the trust will be even lower. There's a lot of polls came out the last couple of days talking about who do you blame, almost 2-to-1. Here's the ABC Washington Post poll. Trump and Republicans, 53, Democrats, 29. Who do you blame?
I blame them all equally.
Both sides.
Absolutely.
How about you?
I blame the president.
Why?
Squarely the president, because you can't hold the nation hostage. The Congress offered him, I believe, $1.7 billion for the wall, and then he moved the goalpost on that, and that was unfortunate. So Democrats have been showing up to negotiate, but the president is doing what we call regressive bargaining. He, moved the goalpost, and that is absolutely unfair.
When you go back, you are at work. When
Absolutely.
ultimately this gets resolved,
Yes, sir.
Getting back to your notion about attitudes, does this just disappear or does this linger? I mean, I am a vengeful sort of soul, I have to admit. I don't mean in a horrible way, but I remember slights. It's like immoral as far as I'm concerned. What happens the day it's over and you start getting your back pay? Is everything forgiven or does this linger?
Well, this is the third shutdown I've experienced in the last 5 years. And frankly, the budget will only come up again in October when the fiscal year ends. So I'm worried it'll happen again.
How about your members? I know some of them are here, but I mean, other members you have in other parts of the government, what's their attitude? And by the way, Donald Trump says that he's talked to a lot of workers, federal workers, who are either furloughed or working like you are, who support the wall, support what he's doing. Do you know any of those?
Well, Donald Trump also uses a lot of mistruths or lies.
Do you know any of your members?
I know a lot of our members. I was a president of a 5-state local.
No. I mean, do you know that any of your members are saying, even though this is painful, I support what he's doing? I think that wall's got to be built. That's the first priority.
I personally do not know any of our members that have said that. I do know one of our council presidents who broke ranks with AFGE from the Border Patrol Union, who absolutely went with President Trump. But AFGE has stood firmly and said that is not our position. That's not our members' position. And the AFGE has a saying, and our members use it oftentimes: "We will remember in November."
Amen. Linda, nice to see you. We got to go. I'm sorry we're out of time. Be well. Thanks so much. Good luck to you, David. Pleasure, Valyria. Thank you. I wish you the best of luck, both of you.